Okay, hi. So we're going to talk about HR performance measures today. So it's a continuation from the 6 ratio measures that we looked at and spent quite a lot of time on. So we're looking at 3 labour performance measures. So you need to be able to use, interpret, and evaluate 3 different measures. We've probably come across at least one of these before, but they are quite straightforward. One lesson should be plenty for these ratios. So, labour productivity, I'm sure we've mentioned this in the past. So what I want you to do is a little question. So 340 workers, they're producing 16,000 pairs of shoes in an 8-hour shift. What is the labour productivity? And if each worker is paid $850 a shift, what is the labour cost per shoe? So what is the cost that's directly related to wages for a single pair of shoes being produced? Okay, so you should have got 16,000 divided by 340, it's just output over input. That's what productivity is, output over input. So we're talking about output per worker. So each worker per day per 8-hour shift is responsible for 47.06 shoes per worker. Okay, so if we pay each worker $850 a day, then we take that 850 divided by 47.06, the productivity. So therefore, the labor cost per shoe is $18.06. Okay, so that means the cost of producing one shoe that's directly related to wages is $18 per shoe. Okay, so somehow the company manages to increase output to 18,000 shoes per day with the same amount of workers. What is the new productivity and the new labor cost per shoe? Okay, so originally, as we know, we had 47 shoes per worker per 8-hour shift, and that equated to $18 labor cost per shoe. But what if we could get 18,000? What if we could do something that would get 18,000 shoes out of those 340 workers? Well, we would simply redo the formula, and our labor productivity would go up to almost 53 shoes per worker. And our labor cost per shoe would go down to $16 per worker. Okay, so why is that important? Why is that relevant? Well, we are basically, that's going to allow the business to perhaps lower their prices because their labor cost per shoe is reduced, or we can enjoy higher profit margins if we kept the price the same. So if the price remained exactly the same and yet your labor cost per shoe came down, assuming ceteris paribus, labor, material costs, distribution costs, marketing costs stayed the same, we would instantly have a higher profit margin because we've lowered our labor cost per shoe. So what I want to do is another activity that proves this again. So what I'd like to do is work through this. We've got company A, we've got company B, and just 4 questions. So calculate the missing information, the labor productivities, and the labor cost per shoe. Which company has the highest productivity? What are the implications for each business's labor cost per unit? And what do you think whichever company, I don't know which one it is to be honest, whichever company has the highest productivity, how might they be achieving that greater productivity? So just copy this table down, take you 30 seconds, and then answer these questions in your notes. Okay, so you should have got these numbers here. Labor productivity, 593 per worker. Company B, 759 per worker, and therefore that equates to they're paying them the same pay. So that's obviously not a reason, is that they're getting 58.94 cost per unit, and company B are getting 46.06 cost per unit. So what could they be doing? Well, you want to be thinking things like motivation, better working practices, better division of labor, better capital, better training, maybe better recruitment in the first place. But somehow they are getting nearly well, over 200 units, 230, 240, 230-ish units out of each worker. So they must be doing something better. Maybe that's better capital and it's nothing to do with the workers, but companies are certainly doing something to get more out of each worker. And as a result, they are getting cheaper labor cost per unit. So again, that's going to allow them to enjoy higher profit margins or undercut company A and charge a cheaper price. Okay? So next activity, I'd like you to copy this down. Kind of summarizes what we've been talking about with labor productivity. So copy and complete this down into your notes and fill in the gaps. We'll go through the answers to these gaps in our next Google Meet. Okay, so another key measure is labor turnover. Okay, so have a little think. What do you think labor turnover could mean? So it's the percentages of work. It's the percentage of workers that leave the business in a given time period. So we calculate the workers that leave in, say, a month or a financial year or in whatever time period, divided by the average total number of workers in that time period. Okay. So it's basically what percentage of the workforce leaves in a given time period, and a high percentage would generally be considered a bad thing because you're going to have higher recruitment costs and you're going to have workers that are probably demotivated because if they're leaving, it's probably an indication that something's wrong. So, quick evaluation. Are there any advantages of a high labor turnover? It's generally considered a bad thing, but are there any? And are there any and obviously there are several disadvantages. So copy this table in, have a little think. Okay, so let's have a look at some points that I've come up with. So if we've got a high labor turnover, obviously that's going to reduce our wage bill, particularly if we don't replace them. Maybe we are using more capital, or maybe we're just overstaffed. So maybe we've got a lower wage bill due to less workers, and because we're not making them redundant, they're actually choosing to leave. They get no severance pay, so they get no pay when they leave the business. We get fresh ideas, so new staff are coming in, so it could bring in fresh ideas, and we might get rid of weak, negative staff that should have left anyway. Okay, so there aren't many advantages, but there are a few, and then you'll see there's many more disadvantages. So we've got to retrain the workers. Okay, so that's from the simplest thing of induction training all the way through to on-the-job and off-the-job training. It's often a sign of a bigger morale problem and a motivation problem. It can often cause a ripple effect where workers leave and then their friends leave, so then they leave. As we looked at AS level, recruitment is very expensive. We might end up with gaps in our productivity and knowledge. If somebody with specialist skills leave, then that's going to leave a gap. And particularly in the service sector, so maybe PTs or maybe, I don't know, anything that's very face-to-face, if they have a higher teaching even, if the customer might be unhappy if their PT or their teacher leaves because they've got to get used to a new person. So it's generally considered a negative thing. And the final bit, and this will be it for this video, is labor absenteeism. So that's percentage of absenteeism in a given time period. And again, if this is really high, that's going to give an indication of a bigger problem. So we take the number of days taken off for unauthorized absences, so number of days where people are phoning in sick and it's unauthorized, divided by the total days worked by the workforce over this period. And that would give us a percentage of absenteeism. Okay, so we've been looking at this little bit today, simple little bit. You want to be able to calculate and interpret the following: labor productivity, labor turnover, absenteeism, and then the limitations of these calculations we'll discuss in a further date. Okay, so do all the little activities on this video and make notes based on this part of the specification. Okay.